Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep this time. We're looking at some writings from Baha'u'llah and Abdul-Baha.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating.
We're going to be exploring human nature, spiritual reality, the whole thing.
Big questions.
Big, big questions. And these writings, they're originally in Spanish.
That's right.
But don't worry, we'll break down the key ideas for you. I think you'll find it super insightful.
Definitely. And, what struck me is how relevant they are.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though they were written a while back, they shed light on so many issues we're grappling with today.
Exactly. Abdul-Baha even points out, right at the beginning, that a lot of today's conflicts stem from how we view human nature.
Like all the political, economic, social turmoil. It comes down to differing views on what it means to be human.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? We get so caught up in the day-to-day, we rarely start to think about the underlying causes.
The root of the problem.
Yeah. Like, what is it about our understanding of ourselves that leads to these clashes? Have you ever thought about that?
It's a huge question.
It is. And this deep dive, I think it'll give us a framework to understand these complexities better.
Absolutely. And hopefully help us navigate them.
Okay, so let's jump in. We'll start with Baha'u'llah's Palabra de Sabiduría. The words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Like short, powerful statements.
Spiritual proverbs, almost.
Exactly. Guiding principles for a good life.
A life with meaning.
Yeah, life aligned with spiritual principles. And a few that really resonated with me were, the essence of wisdom is the fear of God. True memory is making mention of the Lord. And the essence of faith is to be sparing in words and abundant in deeds.
Powerful stuff.
I know.
And what's amazing is that they're so concise, yet they have this depth. They're not telling you what to do, but they make you think.
Right. And then Abdul-Baha, he gets into the power of thought in Al Realidad del Hombre. He basically says our thoughts shape us. Like, they're not just fleeting things.
Right, they have a real impact.
Yeah. And he talks about the difference between heavenly thoughts, which lead to a better, more refined character.
More sanctified.
And worldly thoughts.
Yeah.
Which can pull us down, make us more like, well, animals.
It's about what we choose to focus on.
It is. Are we dwelling on negative things, or are we trying to cultivate positive thoughts?
Thoughts of compassion, generosity, forgiveness.
Exactly. And Abdul-Baha suggests that those choices have consequences. Like real-world consequences. They affect our actions, our relationships, who we become, really.
It all starts in the mind.
It really does. It's a good reminder that we have the power to choose our thoughts.
We can direct them, shape them.
Yeah. Okay, and then Abdul-Baha talks about something pretty amazing. He describes the human intellect as this incredible gift from God. He says it's capable of unlocking all these mysteries of creation.
It's powerful.
And even reaching a kind of prophetic insight through science.
Wow.
It's mind-blowing. Think about it.
Okay.
Humanity has harnessed electricity. We've mastered flight. We've even explored the subatomic realm. It's incredible what we can do.
Yeah, when you think about it that way.
Right. But Abdul-Baha, he also cautions us. He says we can misuse this gift.
Especially in things like warfare,
Oh, absolutely. Destructive technologies.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is. And he asks this question: how can we use our understanding to make the world a better place?
To fulfill the true potential of this gift.
Yeah, that's a big question.
It is.
Okay, and then things get even deeper. Abdul-Baha introduces the 3 levels of reality.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So he divides human existence into 3 realms. The body, which is our physical form.
Right, the tangible stuff.
Yeah. Then there's the soul,
Okay.
which is like an intermediary.
The bridge.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the spirit, the divine spark that's within each of us.
Okay, I'm following.
And he uses this analogy of a tree to illustrate these levels.
Oh, that's interesting.
The seed represents the spirit, the tree itself is the soul, and the fruit, well, that represents our actions, the things we do in the physical world.
So our actions are the fruit of our soul.
Exactly. And the quality of those actions, the quality of the fruit, depends on the health of the entire tree.
It's all connected.
Right. And here's where Abdul-Baha gets really serious. He says if we only focus on our physical desires, if we neglect our spiritual side,
Yeah.
we become trapped. We become, as he puts it, worse than animals.
Wow.
But if we cultivate our spirit, if we nurture that divine spark, then we can tap into a higher purpose. We can act with more awareness, be a force for good in the world.
It's a choice we have to make.
Every single day. It makes you think, what am I prioritizing in my life? What am I feeding the body or the spirit?
Deep stuff.
It is. Okay, and then there's this really interesting part where Abdul-Baha talks about nature.
Okay.
how it's always in motion, how everything in the physical world reaches a peak and then declines.
It's cyclical.
Yeah, like a bird that soars but eventually has to land, a flower that blooms but then wilts and fades. But the soul, he says, is different. It has this unlimited potential for growth. It doesn't follow that same cycle of rise and fall.
It keeps ascending.
Exactly. And this connects to a bigger idea, the immortality of the soul.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Think about it. Humans have always had this sense that there's something beyond this physical life.
We pray for the departed. We wonder about the afterlife.
Right. And Abdul-Baha suggests that this yearning, this innate sense, points to something real. The soul's journey continues. It goes beyond the limits of our physical existence.
So it's not just about this life.
It's a much bigger picture.
Makes you think about the choices we make, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, what if the things we do here have an impact that echoes throughout eternity?
Why?
Okay, and then Abdul-Baha takes us even deeper. He talks about the natural man and the spiritual man.
Two sides of us.
Yeah, like we have these two natures within us,
Yeah.
two forces that are always kind of pulling us in different directions.
We have the capacity for both good and bad.
Exactly. We can be loving and compassionate,
Selfless.
but we can also be selfish, greedy, even cruel.
It's a constant struggle.
It is. It's like there's an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other.
I like that.
And we get to choose who to listen to and to explain how we can transform, how we can move from our lower nature to a more refined state. Abdul-Baha uses this analogy of iron being transformed by fire.
Okay, I'm listening.
So you have this iron, it's solid, cold, but when you subject it to intense heat,
It changes.
it loses its original properties. It takes on the qualities of the fire. Heat, light, fluidity.
It becomes something new.
Exactly. And Abdul-Baha suggests that we can go through a similar transformation.
So the challenges we face, the difficulties, the fires of life.
They can either harden us, make us more rigid, or they can refine us, help us let go of those qualities that no longer serve us.
Powerful imagery.
It is. It makes you think about what those fires might be in your own life, right?
Absolutely. And what qualities are you holding on to that are maybe holding you back?
Ooh, good question. But you know, it's interesting. Abdul-Baha then goes on to challenge this whole idea that nature is inherently perfect.
Really?
Yeah, he says that nature, left to its own devices, can be wild and untamed, even unproductive. It takes human effort, human intervention, to cultivate its potential and make it beautiful and bountiful.
I never thought of it that way.
Right. And what's really thought-provoking is that the people who often claim that nature is perfect are often those who benefit the most from transforming it.
I see what you mean.
We create cities, we build technologies, we cultivate gardens.
We shape and direct nature's potential.
Exactly. So if we apply the same understanding to our own development, should we passively wait for perfection, or should we actively cultivate our potential, embrace growth and refinement?
That's a good question. It seems like Abdul-Baha is advocating for an active approach.
He is. It's about taking charge of our own destiny, not just letting things happen randomly. Okay, so we've covered a lot, right? The nature of humanity, the power of thought, this whole idea of transformation. It's a lot to process.
Mind-blowing stuff.
But even as we delve into these concepts, Abdul-Baha acknowledges a fundamental problem. How can a finite human mind, like ours, even begin to grasp something infinite and divine?
Right, it's a paradox.
It's like we need a bridge between these two realms, you know?
Some way to connect the finite with the infinite.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of the mediator comes in, or as it's often called, the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit. I'm curious to hear more about that. It's like a conduit.
Okay.
Channeling the divine into our world, into our lives.
I see, like a bridge between the two.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And then we get to this whole idea of sacrifice. I've always struggled with that one.
Yeah, it can be a tough concept.
Right, like is it really just about Adam and Eve and the apple and now we're all paying for their mistake?
There's definitely more to it than that.
Abdul-Baha seems to suggest something much deeper.
He does. He uses the example of Christ's sacrifice to illustrate this point.
Okay, so what's he saying?
Well, he argues that it wasn't just about appeasing God or wiping away sins. It was about something much more profound.
Like what?
An act of selfless love, so powerful that it could transform humanity on a spiritual level.
Wow. But what does that mean for us, practically speaking?
Well, there's a personal aspect to sacrifice that Abdul-Baha emphasizes.
Okay.
He talks about sacrificing our lower nature's desires, those ego-driven impulses that keep us trapped in a cycle of self-gratification.
So it's not about, like, literally sacrificing ourselves.
Not in a physical sense, no.
Yeah.
It's more about an internal struggle.
Choosing a higher path.
Exactly. Even when it's difficult. Even when it requires letting go of things we think we need.
So it's about those internal battles, the choices we make every day.
Right. It goes back to that analogy of iron being transformed by fire.
Ah, I see the connection.
We sacrifice the solidity and coldness of our lower nature. We take on the qualities of the divine spirit. Heat, light, fluidity.
Okay, that's starting to make more sense. But even with all these explanations, there's still this question of how we can grasp spiritual truths. I mean, our human perspective is so limited.
It is, isn't it? Like trying to fit an ocean into a teacup.
Exactly. Bahai even uses some interesting comparisons. He says a mineral can't understand a plant can't grasp an animal, and so on.
We're limited by our level of being.
Right, so how do we bridge that gap? How do we access a higher level of understanding?
That's where the idea of manifestations comes in.
Manifestations.
Or prophets, as they're often called. Think of them like perfectly polished mirrors, reflecting the sun of truth in a way that our limited minds can perceive.
Because they provide a glimpse into the divine.
Exactly. A language through which we can begin to comprehend truths that would otherwise be inaccessible to us.
So it's not about worshiping the mirror itself. It's about appreciating the light that shines through it.
Precisely. Each manifestation reveals a facet of the eternal truth, tailored to the specific needs of humanity at a particular time.
That makes sense. So it sounds like Bahá'í is calling for a balance, right? Material advancement and spiritual progress.
Yes, he emphasizes that both are important. It's not about rejecting the world or becoming a hermit.
It's about integrating those two aspects of our being.
Right. He makes this striking comparison. He says, a perfect human body without a spirit is no different from a well-fed animal.
We might have all the material comforts, but without cultivating our spiritual side, we're missing something essential.
The divine spark that makes us human.
And that's where he introduces the idea of a second birth.
Yes, it's not just about our physical birth. It's about a spiritual awakening. A moment when we move from the material world into a new awareness of the divine realm.
So what would it take for someone to experience this second birth? What steps can we take to move from a purely material existence to a more enlightened, spiritually informed way of being?
That's the question Abdul-Baha leaves us with. And while he offers guidance and principles, he emphasizes the importance of individual effort, of actively seeking that transformation, of choosing a path that leads to a more meaningful existence.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. It's incredible how these writings, even though they're rooted in a specific spiritual tradition, offer insights that feel so universal, relevant to anyone seeking a deeper understanding of themselves and the world.
They do, don't they? It's like they speak to something deep within us, a yearning for something more.
Absolutely. And even though the language can feel a bit old-fashioned at times, the ideas themselves are so fresh, so applicable to the challenges we face today.
They offer guidance and inspiration for navigating the complexities of modern life.
It's the power of spiritual truth, right? It transcends time and place.
It speaks to something eternal within us, something that longs for meaning and purpose.
So as we start to wrap up our exploration, what's one question we can leave our listeners with? Something to ponder as they go about their day.
Well, we keep coming back to that beautiful metaphor of the heart as a lamp. So maybe the question is, what can we do to make sure our lamps are filled with the brightest, most enduring light?
What choices can we make? What actions can we take? What thoughts can we cultivate to fan that inner flame and become a source of illumination in the world?
It's a call to action, an invitation to take these insights and translate them into real-world change.
Both within ourselves and in the world around us.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about the power of thought, the role of sacrifice, the importance of service, the pursuit of knowledge, the vision of unity, and now this challenge to keep our lamps burning bright.
It's a lot to take in, but it's also incredibly inspiring.
It is. It's a message of hope, of purpose, a reminder that we have the power to create a better world.
And speaking of challenges, Abdul-Baha also talks about the concepts of heaven and hell. Are those literal places, or is he speaking metaphorically?
That's a great question. Are we talking about pearly gates and fiery pits? Or is there something more nuanced going on?
I've always wondered about that myself.
Me too. It's one of those age-old mysteries.
Well, Abdul-Baha offers a perspective that I find really insightful. He talks about heaven and hell not as physical locations, but as states of being.
Conditions of the soul.
Exactly. Conditions that we create through our thoughts, actions, and choices.
So it's more about our internal experience than our external surroundings.
Precisely. He describes heaven as a state of nearness to God, a condition of spiritual enlightenment and joy, a realm of pure love where the soul is free from the limitations of the material world and basks in the divine presence.
And what about hell? Is it some kind of fiery underworld where sinners are punished for eternity?
Abdul-Baha describes hell as a state of remoteness from God, a condition of spiritual darkness and anguish, a realm of separation where the soul is consumed by its own ego and suffers the consequences of its actions.
So it's not about punishment from an angry God. It's more about the natural consequences of our choices, of aligning ourselves with either the divine attributes or with our own lower nature.
Exactly. Abdul-Baha emphasizes the law of cause and effect, both in this life and in the next. If we choose a path of love, kindness, generosity, and service to others, we create a heavenly condition within ourselves and experience its blessings. But if we choose a path of selfishness, greed, hatred, and disregard for others, we create a hellish condition marked by separation, isolation, and spiritual suffering.
It's a powerful reminder that we're shaping our own destiny, both in this life and in the next. We have the power to choose the path that leads to greater happiness, fulfillment, and spiritual enlightenment, or the path that leads to suffering, regret, and spiritual darkness.
And even small acts of kindness, of love, of service to others can have a profound impact, not only on our own souls, but on the world around us.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness, that our choices have repercussions beyond ourselves.
Exactly.
So it's not about waiting until we die to experience heaven or hell. It's about creating those conditions within ourselves right here, right now, through our thoughts, actions, and our commitment to living a more spiritual life.
Absolutely. It's about choosing a path of spiritual growth, of aligning ourselves with those divine attributes that reside within each of us, and contributing to the betterment of humanity.
It's a challenging message, but also incredibly inspiring. It gives me hope and a sense of purpose, especially in the midst of all the complexities and challenges of the world today.
And remember, we're not alone on this journey. We have each other, the guidance of sacred writings, and the power within us to create a world that reflects those higher ideals we've been discussing.
Yeah, it really is inspiring. Like, it gives you this whole new way of looking at things.
Like a guidebook.
Yeah, a
Lives.
guidebook for life. And it reminds us that we have the power to choose, right?
We're not just passive bystanders.
Exactly. We can actively shape our own destiny, both individually and as a society. So, okay, we've covered so much in this deep dive. Human nature, the power of thought, sacrifice, service, knowledge, unity, even heaven and hell. It's been a lot.
Quite a journey.
It really has. And what's amazing to me is how these writings, even though they're from a specific spiritual tradition, they have this universal appeal.
Yeah, anyone can relate to them.
If you're searching for meaning, for a deeper understanding of life, I think you'll find something valuable in them. And, even though the language can feel a little old-fashioned sometimes, the ideas themselves are so timeless.
They speak to the human condition.
Exactly. And they offer real guidance for navigating the challenges we face today.
It's the power of truth, I think. It transcends time and place.
It's like they're tapping into something deep within us, something that connects us all.
That yearning for purpose, for connection.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what's one final question we can leave our listeners with? Something to ponder, as they go about their day.
Well, remember that metaphor we keep coming back to, the heart as a lamp.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image.
What can we do each and every day to keep that lamp burning bright?
What choices can we make? What actions can we take? What thoughts can we cultivate to fan that flame and become a source of light for others? It's a powerful challenge, right?
It is. It's a call to action.
A reminder that we have the power to make a difference. Well, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. And if you're feeling adventurous, why not check out the source writings for yourself? There's so much more to discover. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep those lamps burning bright.